James Caan, thank you for joining us on EGTV. You arrived at MIPIM yesterday. How do you view the sentiment here?
Yeah, just flew in yesterday. I suppose, firstly, the weather is amazing. It's been fantastic. Caan is always incredible, actually. And this year, I think MIPIM's been really interesting because it's not as busy as it has been in previous years. But I think this year, I think all the right people are here. You know, I don't think you've got a lot of the kind of touristy crowd that just want to be at MIPIM. But actually, I think there are serious buyers. I think there are the right companies, the right representatives. So I've definitely, I think, had a very good couple of days here. And I've met some very interesting people. I think my sort of take on the sentiment is I don't believe the market's really recovered the way some people are viewing it. And I say that because I don't think there's any evidence. You know, and I think as an investor, you don't make decisions on rumours. You base decisions on fundamentals. You know, and there are lots of bankers here, lots of lawyers, accountants, etc. Nobody has shown me a piece of evidence that says the market has recovered. I think there are some blips, and I think central London is a blip market. The only reason I see the market strong there is because there's no stock. That doesn't mean the market's recovered. That just means supply and demand. You have a handful of transactions with 20 people bidding. What's going to happen? The price will rise. It doesn't mean the market's recovered.
There's a lot of macroeconomic uncertainty out there. There's political uncertainty as well. It's making people nervous about the second half of this year and beyond. Would you put yourself in that camp then?
I mean, again, what are you basing it on? You're basing an opinion on very little activity. So people are saying, you know, do you think there'll be a double dip because the election? But there's no stock. You go back to fundamentals. You know, if the number of transactions are so small, what effect will the political outcome have? In order for the market to change sentiment, you need to increase the supply of stock. What's going to create that? That's the driver. It's not whether Cameron's running the country or Gordon's running the country. It's, is there stock on the market? Until there is sufficient stock. And right now, I think where everybody has called this wrong, I think everybody to a man in MIPIM worked on the assumption that when the market went into recession and valuations collapsed, that loan to value had diminished within the banks would therefore force stock onto the market. Including me, we all made that assumption. We all thought the banks would release a huge amount of stock. Now, over the past 3 recessions, that has happened every single time. So right now, just with, I think, the top 3 to 4 banks in this country, there is 100 billion of stock, which generally you would have expected to have been filtered into the market. There's none. That's why the market, I think, is where it is. So I think until the banks start to release some of the stock they're holding, it isn't going to happen. Why are the banks not releasing the stock? Because this time round what they're saying is, although the valuations have dropped, but they are still having their debt serviced. So as long as people are continually paying their repayments, technically the bank doesn't have a problem. So although the value's down, but they're getting the interest. Why or how are they getting that serviced? Is because interest rates are the lowest they've been in history. So actually, for people who have loans, they're in a position to repay. So in a way, we've got a couple of factors that are so unique, which has created a market that I think people have really understood yet.
Okay, and you would expect that orderly release to continue even as they seek to restructure their balance sheets?
I mean, I've spoken because all the banks are here, and I have spoken to all of them, and I think that they're all now saying that it's taken them longer than they'd anticipated, but because of the credit crisis, because of restructuring the banks, because of the government intervention, there's a lot that has to have happened. Everybody's now saying we're kind of over it now. We're now in a place where we can start to release some of that stock. And I think when that starts to come into the market, then you'll see a reaction or a response. And that's the response I think is more sustainable.
Okay, we haven't seen too many launches here this week, but you are here to launch. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm principally here because I've spent most of my life in the commercial market. which is offices, industrial, retail. That's really been my bread and butter activity in real estate. Because of what's happened in the market recently, we've decided to move into the residential market. So we're launching Hamilton Bradshaw Real Estate, which is focusing specifically on residential, and we're going to launch principally in the high-end market, which is essentially Knightsbridge, Sloane Square and Mayfair. So we're picking, I was always a great Monopoly lover, and those purple boxes, I think, always the ones that made the most money. So I've just sort of carried on the sentiment as a child and thought, if the hotel gets the most rent on Park Lane, that's where I need to be. So we're going to focus around the prime areas. And in those areas, what we found is there's a lot of unrefurbished properties that are still quite dated, but valuations are very high. So I think when people are spending anywhere between 8 to 12 million on a house or a flat, they want it to be modern. And I don't think there's enough modern property in that area. So essentially what we plan to do is, Nick Candy has done an amazing job in designing and bringing a very high quality product to the market. And Nick's really created the market for apartments, and I think it's really well established now. What he hasn't done is he hasn't extended that to houses. So what we're going to be doing is focusing on purchasing houses, individual dwellings, and bringing them up to that sort of Candy and Candy level, which, is a compliment to Nick.
Okay, and have you set yourself any targets?
We have the first property coming onto the market next month. So we bought one, we've refurbished it, we spec'd it out, and it comes to the market in April. So very excited.
Okay, what sort of value are you expecting to place on that?
It's coming on the market at 7 million, 6,950,000.
Okay.
A bargain.
And how are you funding the venture?
Well, as you know, in Dragons, I normally sit there with a little bit of cash. So this is going to be essentially a venture funded by Hamilton Bradshaw, my private equity vehicle. But one of the things that we're going to do this time, which is quite different, is on my website, I constantly get approached by so many people who say, I'd love to invest with you. I just read your book and I think it would be great if I could do a deal with you. And we actually get a lot of people approaching us from our web. The smallest one, I think, has come to us about £25,000. And we had somebody approach us 2 weeks ago, which was quite amazing, who had 50 million to invest. Read the book, fell in love with the book, thought it was great, and thought, actually, I'd like to invest with him. And we were all quite sort of, is that real? But we checked him out, we did some due diligence, absolutely existed, just sold a company, very liquid, and basically needed somewhere to invest. And as we sit here today, he's currently looking at a deal with us at the moment where we're going to be doing together. So I think the plan is we'll have not a huge amount of debt funding on this. Principally will be a small amount of debt funding, and majority will be high net worth individuals who will co-invest with us on a deal-by-deal basis.
Okay, James Caan, thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you.